Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MAGA podcast. This is season 2, episode number 2. My name is David Lopez, and I'm the founder of massmaga.com and the host of this podcast. As this podcast is dropping in February of 2026, the election season's just getting underway. And these elections are super important to the residents of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And to that end, we have a great guest on this podcast episode by the name of Brensley from Wayland. And Ann is running for the Republican Lieutenant Governor position for elections coming up in November. Hey, Ann, how you doing today? And thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm having a good day so far. So far,
Excellent.
so good.
Excellent. Yeah, me too. So let's just jump right in. So the objective of the Mass MAGA podcast is to educate, motivate, and encourage people to participate in the political process here in Massachusetts. And if it's okay, I'd like to start out with your background and motivation for running and tell us a little bit about yourself and what prompted you to get in the race.
I'm currently a select woman in Wayland, Massachusetts, but my entire professional career has actually been in investments. So I started my career getting all my licenses to practice in investments, and then I ended up going to law school at night. So I always shout out to Suffolk law students, especially those who are going through the evening program, because it's a grind to work during the day and then go to law school at night. And then I started my own investment firm when I was 29. I'd always been an entrepreneur, so very pro small business. Honestly, in Massachusetts, pro every business. Stay here, please don't leave. And I've had the opportunity to give back to my community. I've been on multiple nonprofit boards. I was recognized as 40 under 40 by the Boston Business Journal. So I've really been embraced by Massachusetts, and I value the state tremendously. And I think, based on what people are seeing right now, which is just everybody is strained. Everybody is just squeezed. You got businesses leaving because they just can't afford to work here. You have small businesses who are trying to make ends meet and watching their utility and insurance costs go up. You're looking at families who are really struggling just to go from day to day. And so I was really motivated by that. And, I really love that you're doing this podcast with the intent of bringing people in and getting them enthusiastic, because let me tell you, 2026 is the year. This is a make or break moment for all of us, because if we allow another 4 years of what's been going on, it's just going to tighten. You're going to see a lot more state overreach. We all know that the state has been kind of coming into our towns in multiple different angles, and we need to be engaged. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for trying to promote that.
Oh, no problem whatsoever. So, tell us a little bit about the process to run for lieutenant governor. Now, I mean, obviously, it's kind of a different approach, right? I mean, you're kind of doing it on your own in your own lane, more or less. So, tell us a little bit about, how does it actually work running for lieutenant governor here in Massachusetts?
Great question. And I may go into a little extra detail just because I want to encourage everybody to run for office. It's, before I started, right before I actually, kind of launched, I reached out to a very good friend and I said, "Is this crazy to be running for a statewide office?" And she was like, "It is." And she's like, "But that's kind of your thing, and you care about what you're trying to do, so it'll be okay." And just like anything, when it's challenging, you've never done it before, it can be intimidating. Please run for office. Everybody should run if they have a passion for some sort of change that they want to make. And the process itself, Lieutenant Governor, I can walk through that very quickly, which is, I traditionally the lieutenant governor runs with a governor. They're essentially picked by a governor. Maybe there's a complement to the overall campaign. I did it a little differently. I actually, in the Republican Party, the last time somebody ran the way that I ran was in the early 80s. And so I'm definitely breaking kind of tradition here, but I'm doing it because I see something needs to change and I think I can change that. And so that's all it requires, really. I was lucky to be embraced by the party, but that's all it takes is somebody wanting to change and saying, "I'm going to go for it."
Terrific. So, when did you announce your actual candidacy?
September 15th of 2025. So I've been doing this for almost 5 months. And let me tell you, it's been a study in human nature. It's been humbling at moments. It's been hilarious at moments. It's introduced me to so many different characters, I promise you. And I think everybody kind of knows this, in their heart, but this state, there's so many things that connect us and intertwine us. And there's so many reasons to be optimistic. We just gotta, get more organized as a state and start supporting candidates and making change.
Awesome. Now that's terrific. So I noticed you have a JD from Suffolk, right? So
Yes.
I'm a fellow Suffolk alum. I got my MBA in entrepreneurship and actually spent 8 years teaching at Suffolk, Babson and Clark as well. So can you tell? So it was a great experience. I mean, not
Yeah.
just to get the MBA there, but to teach the students, just phenomenal, kind of give back type of approach. But so how does your Suffolk experience sort of help with, managing your campaign, running your campaign, and how do you think it will help you in your role as lieutenant governor?
So Suffolk was one of my most favorite experiences in all honesty, and there's multiple reasons why. I think I did the evening program, which meant that I had a mixture of professionals who were already kind of in the industry in some way, shape, or form, and then also just young guns who were kind of doing it the way that I was doing it. And there, just for those who don't know, Suffolk has a huge presence in our court system. And they have a really amazing alumni group that will come out and support you. And there are people who I went to law school with that I reached out to and was like, "Hey, I'm running," and they were like, "Let me help you." And so, just like you, Suffolk has just been kind of a backbone, an area that feels very comfortable, an area that, I actually taught as an adjunct there as well in the business school. I did business writing and globalization, and I tried to kind of just bring the outside experience into the classroom, as I'm sure you did too. And, there's a really tight-knit community there. And so I think you become a little bit more fearless when you feel like you have that behind you.
Oh, absolutely. It was great, great. I taught the honors program online and in person and all kinds of finance and sales course. So it was great. And I'm also a fellow investment professional. I had 30 years on Wall Street before I started teaching. So those securities exams were fun, I can tell you. So I'm a big fan, as you are, of entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial mindset. I know you're the CEO of, is it Devco North America? So you can tell us a little bit about that, but more broadly, how would you support the entrepreneurship in the Commonwealth and the startup ecosystem as well?
Yeah, there's two really easy ways I think that we could approach entrepreneurship and kind of feeding into that. One is kind of through the vocational schools. I think anybody who's been monitoring the overall industries in Massachusetts see that a lot of these vocational schools could really utilize things like innovation or entrepreneurship because so many individuals who are, whether they're in electrical, plumbing, whether they're in woodworking, they start businesses. When they become successful, they think to themselves, "Hey, I should start a small business doing this." And so I think there's a lot of opportunity within those schools to include innovation into their program and entrepreneurship. So that's one easy getting these young guns who um, are kind of the future business owners out there and feeling motivated. And the second is just supporting the entrepreneurs we already have in Massachusetts. And I've met entrepreneurs who are constantly growing and changing their companies that already exist in Massachusetts. So maybe they're operating as a small company, but they want to get into kind of the mid-sized level. And entrepreneurs, they're constantly changing. And so there's always an opportunity to look at the small businesses we have in Massachusetts and say to ourselves, how do we grow that so that they start hiring more people and we become more attractive as a state?
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, one of the battles that we have really, like on the other side, I guess on the socialist side, they don't like entrepreneurship. They don't like entrepreneurial thinking. They want everybody in a box. So, that was one of the key things that I tried to teach was just to think run your life like an entrepreneur. And if we can kind of win that battle, the psychological battle, I think more people will start businesses, and more people will just really think about their life as a business as well. That's one of the battles that are out there, I think.
I think that's an interesting point, is just more what collectivism does to the kind of the entrepreneurship spirit. And I agree with you. I mean, listen, I've been running my own business for 15 years. I'm a lawyer. I've gone into nonprofits. And so I feel like I have a really good understanding of industry in general. And entrepreneurship is it's the backbone, it's the vision of what's to come in our state. And so anything we can do to encourage that, by encouraging it, we're actually encouraging capitalism. And so I'm with you that I think the state needs a lot less red tape and a lot more capitalist types of approaches.
Terrific. Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I mean, the more people start businesses that creates jobs, we know the whole flow. So that's
Yeah.
good that you're involved in that in terms of your day to day, but you also see the vision of a strong entrepreneurship ecosystem. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's part of economic development, just so that people understand the kind of correlation. Like when you're looking at your own town, it's economic development. It's essentially saying, hey, how do we get more revenue? And one of it really is encouraging entrepreneurship and just businesses in general.
Terrific. So you mentioned earlier you were Boston Business Journal 40 under 40, is that right? So
I
tell
was.
me a little bit about that honor, like how did it come about and what have you learned from that recognition?
Yeah, so to go almost full circle with what the first question you essentially asked me, which was like, how did I kind of choose to run and so forth. 40 under 40 actually was I got approached by a campaign who said, "Hey, have you ever thought about politics?" And I think I was like 35 at the time that I got it, 35, 36. And I remember feeling not worthy of it. Like I was like, how could I lead? How could I what value do I offer? And so I tell people out there right now who might be listening that, maybe right now is not the moment for you to run, but it comes, and if you have it in your mind that maybe that will come, um, I think you'll feel more prepared when it does. So 40 under 40, it actually humbled me, to be honest with you. It made me feel a little bit unworthy. And then I found myself one day saying to myself, hey, I've earned that now. I felt really good, and that made me more confident in everything I did.
So you grew into it, basically.
I grew a great way to explain it. I grew into it, and I was inspired by it. That's for sure.
That's terrific. So I know you're from Wayland, right? So you're a select woman in Wayland, right? And
Yes.
are you and there's a RTC you're involved in a little bit there as
We're trying
well?
to put it together. Yes.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's some great
So
leadership and they moved on but there was a great core group there. So can you tell us a little bit about your work as select woman and some of the skill sets that you developed there and with the RTC as well and how do those skill sets translate into being a great lieutenant governor?
I think one of the best skill sets I really, because when it comes to the actual work, I think the contracts, the understanding of the budgets, the understanding of negotiations, that I kind of already had going into the select board position. But what I think it really did was help me understand kind of the intricacies between being a public servant and being somebody in the private sector. And there is a difference. And what I learned and how to navigate those two, and the difference in objectives and the difference in how you communicate in your role. When you're the president of a business, you think, okay, well, if you're a select woman, maybe you're kind of like the president of your town. And that's not true at all. It's really, really important to understand that difference if you're going to be a leader in the state overall. And one of the ways that I explain it is in business, if I owned 5 properties and one property wasn't doing well, I might say, okay, let's just get rid of that property and it'll help the other 4 succeed. But in public service, you need to make sure every single one of those 5 are succeeding. And maybe not all will get that 100% success rate, but you have to make sure that you're giving back and that you're supporting every single part of that business. And that translates. So we need to support every community within Massachusetts, not just the ones that we think are thriving or that we have, think are going to have a bigger revenue source. We got to look at the areas that are not being supported and support them.
Terrific. So I'm a big fan of RTCs. I was a chair in Stowe, a few years ago. I didn't even know what an RTC was, frankly, until, I was involved in
Until
it.
you did
But,
it.
I'm a big fan of the potential of the RTCs. In other words, almost like if it's done right, just in my opinion, it's almost like a think tank with teeth. So you can develop policy within the RTC, and hopefully, if people run for these different elected positions or the volunteer committee positions, finance, economic development, education, et cetera. I think there's just huge potential there. So I know you're kind of in the process of reforming, the Wayland RTC, but kind of what's the vision there, just, locally at this point, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think Dave, you hit it. You hit it right on the head. I think it's really looking at it kind of like as a source of information, and I would also say it's also a source of education where you can have this group come together and decide on specific topics for the state, but then also educate other groups of people within their community on that specific topic, so that we're all kind of rowing in the same direction. I was kind of new to the RTC world as well. And so I'm learning every day kind of how one RTC will be very focused on one area, another RTC will be focused on another area. And so you see them as very, very different. They operate very, very different, but there's clear similarities that we need to just continue to maximize and kind of leverage, because if we can all row in the same direction, we start becoming our own little machine. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
the Democrats have a well-oiled massive machine in Massachusetts. Well, for us, our machine's going to start with small little machines that come together.
Yeah, and every win counts. I mean, if you can get
Yeah.
an RTC member to be on the school board, the school committee, these almost bench level, not even elected, just volunteer. You get someone in the game, and now they can influence, like you said. So I'm always pounding the table on the potential of these things, and some get there, some are more kind of a social, which is great, but I mean, we want to affect policy. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter, as much.
I encourage you to look at Agawam in Massachusetts. I mean, they restarted and they're killing it. They're doing the right thing, utilizing the right resources, and they're starting to grow. But you can see some enthusiasm with the members. You know that they're going to become a social group along with a politically activist type group, and that's what we want to see across the state.
Yeah, and Dave Lunger is a state committee man, I believe, right?
He's awesome.
And he's
Yes,
doing a
he's great.
phenomenal job out there. And I
Phenomenal.
told him, "You're doing God's work out there, Dave." He's got, District 12, I think, whatever it is, but there's a whole bunch of RTCs, all different levels. So he's out there working hard. So if you're listening, Dave, awesome job. Keep it up.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. No, and I think it's important, right? When you're running a campaign, there are moments you're down. There's moments that you're frustrated. There's moments that you're like, am I making any progress? And so when you have state committee members that are engaged, that are like, hey, come over here. Hey, we're going to help you over there. Hey, we just believe in you. Those basic words can just, get you from point A to point B and keep you trucking. So, we have a bunch of really awesome state committee members, and Dave has been a phenomenal one.
that's terrific. So you mentioned budgeting, as a select woman. So the Massachusetts budget process or proposals, they're all over the map. I think it's, a
Right.
fair statement. And when one party's controlling it, there's no pushback, there's no, as you know. So I guess my question would be, anything stand out to you in terms of the budget proposals, process,
Yep.
outcomes, that you and whoever, gets into the
Gubernatorial.
governor's chair can help to influence and improve in terms of results?
I know this is going to sound almost too massive of a task, but I actually think you almost have to start from scratch. And I don't mean that like, hey, we're going to just eliminate everything we're doing, but I think the gubernatorial candidate is going to have to look at every single penny we're spending and every single line item and say, does that make sense? Because I don't think it's just, I know there's some beliefs on, have there been indiscrepancies in the budget, or is there something we're not aware of? And I would say probably, but at the same time, I think we're also just dealing with an inefficiency issue
Yeah.
where we're just not, every dollar that we put in as a taxpayer, that's coming out to about 36, 37 cents on the dollar. So the question is, why are we doing things wrong and inefficiently? And that's where I'm really, really excited about the gubernatorial candidates because all three have a very strong business background. And so I feel very confident with all three of them on the budget.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean it's a big deal. So that's great. That's good to hear. So the Gen Z, the infamous Gen
Yeah,
Z, right?
Gen Z.
I don't know, is it 18 to 29 or it depends on who you ask,
Yeah,
right? I mean it's somewhere in
yeah.
there. Anyway, Gen Z has been very active politically since the Trump era. And I remember when Trump got elected the first time, I was teaching at Babson, and there were some incidents that made the news, and we'll leave it at that. But some exuberance, some excitement was generated. So there's a lot of individuals in that age range that are kind of up for grabs a little bit in terms of votes. And as I'm sure you know, there's a lot of college Republican clubs out there in Massachusetts. So I guess my question is, what's your Gen Z strategy in terms of to get these folks to help with your campaign, to vote, and then maybe more specifically, any interactions with the Republican clubs that are out there in the colleges?
Yeah, so really nice was Suffolk some organizations at Suffolk reached out to me. I have some interest in the Boston College groups that exist. They have a really nice Republican group that I want to engage with. But I actually think the storyline for Gen Z is really simple, and they know this. They just need somebody to pull it together. And what I believe they're being deprived of is ownership. Right. So, and they're frustrated by a bunch of things there. I think that's why they're advocating and getting involved, and speaking up and using the communication channels that they're better at than we are, to voice some of those concerns. But when they're frustrated, and I've spoken to many different groups, I'll say the problem is you don't have ownership, and that's what you're frustrated about. And they kind of look at me like doing the calculations in their mind, like, wait, is she right? And I'm like, you don't even own your phone. Like the first thing I did when I was like 22 years old was buy a condo. And there were all these different ways that you could buy a condo. So I was investing, and Gen Z is being deprived of ownership. And so what I would encourage, if anybody is listening, is to be involved, because it is shocking how quickly politicians will court you if you become a voting base, right? And there's no reason Gen Z can't be a voting base. And there's no reason that they can't demand ownership and more rights to programs like affordable condos versus affordable apartments. Freedom in just capitalism and the ability to earn money in Massachusetts that allows them to stay here. And so I promise you, the moment you become a voting base, people are going to come and say, "Hey, what do you need? Let's get you what you need so that you vote for us." And so I think that's the message I'm sending to them.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, that's like the old Wall Street saying you try to get people to buy equities, in terms of ownership. The old quote was, no one ever got rich buying a bond, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
we try
that's true.
to encourage, people to own assets and own their own future, really. And that's hopefully
Exactly.
will motivate them to participate. So that's awesome. Um, any entrepreneurial activity, small business, the team is everything, right? I mean, you can have a great founder and he or she does, has the
Right.
vision, but without a good team, they usually don't go anywhere. So, tell me about the team that you've put together so far, because you've been doing this in September.
Yeah.
The team that you've put together and perhaps any open roles that are out there as well.
There's always open roles. I'll say that for sure. There, right now we have two prime objectives. One is 10,000 signatures, and the other one in order to get on the ballot. And then the second one is fundraising for the convention to make sure that I can speak at the convention because there's a pretty hefty price tag on that.
Yeah.
But my whole campaign has been grassroots. And so it is shocking to me how many people are engaged and how many people really believe in 2026 and the gubernatorial race. And so my team is phenomenal because my team is filled with people who just want change and who are looking to be part of that change and are getting enthusiastic by the things that I'm talking about. And I love that what I'm talking about is so dictated by what they want me to talk about. So, it just ends up being a really nice match because it's me saying, hey, okay, this is what's concerning you. Let's talk about the ways to solve that. And that's engaged. I mean, we have more people asking how they can help than we know what to do. And so we're just getting organized. So, for anybody who wants to get involved, there's definitely some positions as far as just helping with signatures, helping with social media. I have somebody who's helping me right now, and she's phenomenal, but she's one person, and I know I'm not keeping up with her. So people just helping me navigate day to day to be get back to people, communications people. But we're very grassroots, and we're open to anybody helping.
Terrific. Great. That's good. So we understand that the crucial aspect of having talented people around you. So that's awesome. So the successful startups that I've worked with as a business coach or, professor or whatever, those early stage companies were excellent at identifying customer pain points. And
Yeah.
then, that was always the big question as a business plan competition judge. What problems are you solving? And if they couldn't
Yeah.
answer that question, I would have to give them some coaching and maybe to help them to realize that. So I guess I could pose the same question. What are the key pain points that you're seeing out there? And, what would your strategy be to solve them? In other words, same question, what problems are you solving?
It's a great question, and I'm glad I have an answer. And hopefully, my answer resonates because it again was very directed by what people were talking to me about. So I'm running on five things right now, five topics that I think are super important. One is the audit, which I believe is really about transparency and control, and what happens when you have a one-party system that's controlling. They can literally control your access to the accounting on where their money is. Second is the MBTA Communities Act. That has affected 177 municipalities in Massachusetts, and so I'm really working with towns to show that it's an overreach. It's state coming into local communities and telling them how to develop their own areas. Parental rights is one that has been brought up to me multiple times, and that goes across the state. Uh, Utility issues. So you're seeing that the average individual in Massachusetts is doing something like putting money into Mass Save just to find out they're not even eligible to benefit from Mass Save. And so these policies are not only ridiculous, but they're costing a significant amount of money. And then lastly is women's right to be safe. And just the notion that, we have some individual rights here, and we got to make sure that people feel like they can exercise those rights. And sometimes you might not even want to exercise it, but to know you can is fundamental to to who we are as a state. So
Great.
those are the five.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. And then, following up with the solutions, and having a good answer to them. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
101, right?
I'm doing activism right now. So every single five of those topics, I am participating, trying to make some change on it. And you can learn more about it. I don't want to go through every single one,
Sure.
but we're moving. We're trying to make change on those five issues.
Terrific. So I noticed you got some tremendous endorsements
Yeah.
recently. So congratulations on that. One of
Thank
them
you.
was Maggie's List.
Yeah.
Maybe you could just spend a moment or two explaining, what that is and kind of the implications of that.
Yeah, so Maggie's List, what's great about Maggie's List is not only is it a national organization, but it's a national organization that we in Massachusetts haven't necessarily been able to engage with too much just because from a candidacy issue, we haven't had that many female candidates running on a state level. And Maggie's List really only works with statewide candidates and then also US representatives and Senate candidates. And so um, I think you're going to see a shift, by the way. I think you're going to see more women come out and run for things. But this is a moment for us to look and say, hey, we can start utilizing the national infrastructure that work in some of these organizations that we don't have in Massachusetts right now. And we can piggyback on them and bring them in and welcome them to Massachusetts and say, hey, let's work together and build a brand even here in Massachusetts.
So that's congratulations on that. That's a big deal. I
Thank
noticed you got a lot of other endorsements. I mean, you don't have to go, it's a nice long list, but what are some of the ones that stand out?
I think it's not, I think they all stand out.
Yes, of
Trust me.
course.
Every
Yeah.
single one is like,
Yep.
I'm very fortunate just to have them. I would almost say what stands out more is just that they go from one end of the party to the other end of the party and everywhere in between. They go from one end of the state to the other end of the state and everywhere in between. They go from, people from one age to the other age, one economic level to the other economic level. And so it's just such a broad, I could not be honestly, I could not be prouder of how diverse, because that's my messaging, right? So it means that I'm saying something that's resonating across the board. And that's all you want to do as a candidate. You want to, again, I said earlier, if I had five properties, that to me is success. If I can feel like I am speaking to and representing all these different facets, um, no, not one endorsement is more important than the other. All the endorsements are incredibly meaningful to me.
Terrific. And I'm sure they're going to continue to come in on a regular basis. So
Thank
that's
you.
awesome. So you talked about signatures to get on the
Yeah.
ballot. So maybe you could just tell us a little about, where you are with the process, what has
Yeah.
to happen, deadlines, any of the logistics around that.
I know we're going full blast right now. So we're looking for business owners who are willing to be depots. Depots being just a place that somebody can come that we can put on our map on our website and say, hey, you're in this area. Here's a couple of places you can go to sign. That's what we're really focused in on right now. Also, anybody who's parts of organizations that might be able to pick up 50 to 100 signatures, we'll bring those the nomination papers to you. So it's an area that we're working on. We just picked them up 2 days ago. We've already gotten over 80 people talking to us about how they can help, but I'm telling it's 10,000 signatures. To do the math, in order to feel very confident you're going to get all those, you need to do 20,000
Correct.
signatures.
Yeah.
So, we have what 344 municipalities in Massachusetts, and you do the math, it's a lot of signatures per town.
Yeah.
So, we need depots, we need business owners, we need people who maybe they own a company of 300 employees, maybe they work, at Market Basket and they can ask their boss whether it's okay to put something out. I will take any depot, any source of signatures at this moment in time.
Terrific. So, as we start to wrap up, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with the community out there. Terrific guest. What can people do now? So, this is coming out February of 2026. What can people do in the next, we have the convention coming up in a couple of
Yep.
months. What can people do, like really short term, to give you a little bit of a boost?
Thank you for asking that. If you're a delegate, give me a shot. I know right now it looks like I'm the only candidate. You never know what's going to happen, and I'd love just the opportunity to kind of earn your vote. Even if I'm the only candidate, I want the opportunity to earn your vote. Um, my website is probably the best way to go, or best place to go to find out how you can help. That's Anne. So my name is spelled with an E, so ANNE 2026.com. So we have a ton of different places that you can sign up for something. And then of course, fundraising. Right now I have to, the convention fee is $25,000. And so the way I break it down, I know if, gosh darn it, if
Yeah,
only I were a Democrat, I could get it for
I
free.
know.
But, it's hard to be a Republican, and that's part of the journey right there. And that's okay.
But we're rebels. I like being a
We're
rebel.
rebels. We're expensive rebels.
Yeah,
So it's the way that I break it down is it's 1,000 people that donate $25. And so that's all I'm asking for. If you have it, please help me. And if you don't, that's okay. Anything will help. And it's okay if you help in a different way. So
terrific. So, one last question. I started the podcast with kind of the vision of what I'm trying to accomplish: educate, motivate, participate, that type of thing. So, any last words of wisdom? I mean, campaign aside, just for a moment, but just for the individuals out there that are Republican or right-leaning, unenrolled, just any sort of pump up words of wisdom for folks out there.
yeah, I think think 2026 is going to be a blast. Like if we can come together and if you can look at somebody and want to engage with them in a positive way and not look at them and say, "Hey, where do you stand on this and where do I stand?" But really just say, "Hey, you live in Massachusetts, I live in Massachusetts. There's something that has brought us both here or there's a history that we share here." And I'm telling you, 2026 this year, not only for right leaning, but just for some change in the state. It's going to be this year. Be engaged. I promise you, every single vote's going to matter. It's going to matter in this election. And getting out there will remind you why you've chosen Massachusetts to be your state.
Terrific. So, thank you, Ann, for joining and being a great guest. Best of luck on your campaign. To the Mass MAGA community out there, thank you for listening. If you want to help out, you can send information such as RTC meetings, candidate websites, other online, excuse me, online resources to info@massmaga.com. If you're not on the email list, you can go to massmaga.com. There's an email sign-in section. And thank you so much, Ann, and to everybody, make it a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.